Hello and welcome to the 5th 2020 NHL Draft recap here at Scouching. Today we're going to be looking at the Colorado Avalanche, and the Avalanche had a relatively quiet day, but I thought they did pretty well overall. However, at 25th overall, they surprised me and quite a few other people by taking a big swing on Justin Barron. Now, Barron is a player who has fought injuries and health problems, and he barely played this season, and what I did see of him that I tracked was just not very good. He's a decent skater with an okay passing ability, especially in the offensive end and into the neutral zone. But I felt that his defensive game was far from ideal. He allowed tons of dangerous shot attempts against, and I just felt that he didn't have the processing ability under pressure that really leads me to believe that he was a player worth taking in the first round. I looked at players like Brennan Brisson, Maverick Bourque, even Ozzy Weisblatt, and especially defenders like Helge Grants and William Wallinder as players that probably would have been pushes that I would have made at 25th overall for the Avalanche. What I saw out of Justin Barron was a poor defensive transition player, a defenseman who allowed a tremendous amount of dangerous shot attempts against while he was on the ice, and a player that I just have a really hard time understanding as a first round pick. But this is the Colorado Avalanche, and they've built a pretty solid NHL organization, so we'll see what they can do with Justin Barron moving forward. The Avalanche then didn't have a pick until 75th overall, but they picked a player at 75th overall that I would have considered at 25th if I felt like taking a huge gamble in Jean-Luc Gourde. I have been a huge fan of Jean-Luc Gourde over the course of this season, and I know he has naysayers, and I know that there are some processing issues, especially in the offensive zone, with reading offenses, finding line mates, and just putting a play together. But at the end of the day, what I see is an elite level skater with elite transition ability. All he did was get the puck in the defensive zone and get it into the offensive zone with control. In the OHL, the only two players that compared to him at that high of a level were Cole Perfetti and Marco Rossi, who were off the board 2 rounds ahead of him. He needs to work on his defensive work rate, he needs to fill out his frame a little bit more to get stronger, and he certainly needs to make the plays that are directly in front of him to get pucks to line mates more often. But he still was driving tremendous amounts of pucks to the front of the net, trying to find line mates and completing over 75% of his passes, even considering how often he was trying those plays. So I'm a big believer in Gourde. I think he could be a really interesting transition center who could be a player that we look back on as a steal in this year's draft. But I know he's had injury issues in the past. I don't think he's going to be much of a goal scorer in the NHL. But I think at 75th, this was a player that you just take your risks on and you might have yourself a steal down the road. At 118th, Colorado took Colby Ambrosia. Now, I've seen Ambrosio play a little bit and tracked a few games here and there, and I see an okay offensive center here. He's got a good shot, he can find the front of the net okay, but he's not the best passer, he's not a great distributor of the puck, at least not at 5-on-5. But I did see some interesting flashes out of him in terms of his skill, his skating, his speed generation, and getting to the front of the net. So I think this is an interesting swing for them to take. He's very young, he's a center, he's able to score goals, so we'll see what happens with him as he spends a few years in college. At 139th, they drafted Ryder Rolston, a player who was on the USA NTDP team last season and switched over to play for the Waterloo Blackhawks. Now, Ryder Rolston is fast, he plays hard, he works hard, but I'm just not sure he processes the game on the fly at enough of a level to really project as an NHL player. I think it's a reasonable swing to take in this range considering the fundamental tools he has, but I've never been particularly blown away with Rolston's ability to produce on a consistent rate, find line mates in the offensive zone, or use the pace and speed that he has at a reasonable enough level to drive offense or drive transitions offensively. He can be a bit of a mess defensively, coughing up pucks as well, right when you don't need him to, but he is a player with strong fundamentals, and again, in this range of the draft, you take guys you like, and if they like him, we'll have to see what happens. The Avalanche then closed out their draft drafting Nils Olman. Now, Nils is a re-entry player that I saw play quite a bit playing on a line with Emil Heinemann, and I do see some crafty skill out of him. He can push offense pretty well, and I thought as a late round swing, he would have been a player that if his name came up, I wouldn't say no. He's been producing at multiple levels in Sweden, he's playing more and more at the SHL level, and I do really like his overall approach to the game. He adapts to pressure well, he can navigate the puck around the ice efficiently, especially for a center, and he's certainly enabled a player like Emil Heinemann to do what he does best away from the puck, while he played more with the puck. He's had a bit of a slow start with Leksand's this year, but he does seem to be a full-time player with that team for the season, so we'll see how the rest of his year goes. If he works out, I think he could be a good two-way player for them, but if he doesn't, you took a flyer and you whiffed. Sometimes that happens. So for the Colorado Avalanche, I'm going to give them a 2C. I think overall their draft crop was average. You're taking a risk on Justin Barron to discover the form that he had prior to this past season. You're taking a chance on Ryder Rolston's fundamental tools. Nils Olman has been a good player for the Leksand's program in the last season. And you're taking a huge swing for the fences with Jean-Luc Gourde in the 3rd round. Again, I'm a big believer in Gourde. The things that he does on the ice are things you need players to be good at. He gets the puck in the defensive zone, and he puts it in the offensive zone. And he puts the puck in front of the net in the offensive zone, almost the most out of anyone that I tracked of the whole season. Colby Ambrosia has nice tools, but hasn't really been able to put it all together on a consistent basis yet. But I am curious to see what he can do over the next few seasons. So overall, I think the Colorado Avalanche might end up with a player from this year's NHL Draft, maybe up to 2, but with the type of talent they drafted, it could be any of the ones that they drafted to be those 2 players that work out. I think they took some interesting flyers, I think they took some big swings, and we'll have to see how it works. So that's all for the Colorado Avalanche recap. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or here on YouTube by clicking join below. You'll get access to a Discord server, exclusive data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects, as well as plenty of other goodies, or you could pick up some merchandise at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and catch me in the next one where we go over the Dallas Stars.